Well, today's project is the Thunderbird, and this is a highly unusual project where the top part of the design, the crown, as you can see, looks like a bird. So it's the table, the back, two wings, the beak and the tail feathers over here. And it's going to be a step cut, as you can see, the steps below. And this is the pavilion. So it's got a lot of cuts, and this is a design that very few people would ever even attempt, because it's done on a 64 wheel, so this is almost a bespoke gem. This would be 1 in a million type of a jewel, to be honest, if I can get it right, and it will be very complex because we're dealing with angles that are so unusual that you just don't get regular angles, so everything's got to meet perfectly. The type of stone I'm cutting is Rose de France, which is a light amethyst, so it's quite a big stone, and it's glued on the dot, but this will be challenged. A lot of it will be ground down, so I expect it to be a lot smaller than this, and I haven't weighed this stone, so I'm not even sure how many carats it would turn out to be, so we'll see what happens. I'm usually falling short on my estimation on how many carats I cut, so I'm not going to even attempt to guess what it's going to be this time. Usually it's way under. So I'm going to let this dry and then I'll move on to the next step. So I've cut the girdle and I've cut a facet at 63 degrees, this section over here, but I'm finding this girdle's obviously going to be too thin, so I'm going to have to cut that down more. And I've noticed there's a slight inclusion. I've gemmed it up a bit and you can see the inclusion running here, so which is probably good because I've got to grind this section out more, so I'm going to put it down to 90 degrees, which means I'm going to lose a bit more material around this side here along the bottom and the point, but that's expected. I mean, that's a pretty thin girdle, and this will be cutting down even further from the pavilion where my finger is, so I've got to cut more of that girdle out and keep working at it. So the pavilion's complete. As you can see, it's a step cut, and from what happened last time, remember there was an inclusion. Well, that inclusion went down a long way, and the actual size of the stone somewhat diminished. So yeah, all the cuts are pretty good. They meet up pretty well. Tremendously difficult stone to cut, and for those people who think cutting steps is that easy, if your disc is a little bit out of alignment or a bit worn, it's really hard to get these cuts lined up. But I'll just get it in focus there, but I think I've done okay, so I'll go into polishing next. Okay, not sure if you can see, but you can see just above my fingernail there's a little patch that won't polish. So what I've got to do, if I can hold my camera still enough, I'll mark this section with the texter, and I'll set it to 20 degrees, so I'll just flip it around and set it to the angle of 20, which is up here. So I'll just set that. Just go across a bit hard the camera, but I'll just lower my quill and I'll just rub it. I've already set this, and you can see it's erased the spot where that mark was, so that's where I'm going to cut. So just a little trick to just find out exactly where you are, and if you just can't get those little patches out. Okay, I've got to still get out that little patch that's got to be polished out. So the pavilion's been cut, and that's the diagram, and if I can get my stone, I've got it out because I need to do a transfer. It's come up pretty good. Lots of elaborate little cuts, as you can see, step cuts, different angles, so it's not a stone for a novice. I don't know whether I can get it backed up so you can see what it looks like against the diagram, but yeah, quite a nice stone. So now we've done the transfer and I'm cutting the crown, and the transfer was not easy because usually when you have a transfer with a round pavilion or even square cuts, you have a centre point on the pavilion, and because this is more a bespoke type of cut, there was no actual real centre point, so I've had to do an unusual dot transfer, and as you can see by the amount of glue, I've had to fill in a huge dot with glue and centre the pavilion differently than I normally would, but that is the challenge with technical type of cuts like this. So I'm going to continue on because I know trying to get the bird feature with the facets on this crown will be difficult, so I'm going to have to be very careful how deep I cut. So we've cut all the facets for the Thunderbird and polished my first facet where my thumb is, so we'll move around and try to finish it off, and then we go on to the reveal. Totally finished with the crown, and now I need to remove it from the dot, and this is going to be very tricky because, as I said before, the transfer was not easy. So the Thunderbird gem has finally been cut and it's come out pretty good. Not sure if you can actually see the bird design, but over to my left where my thumb is, there's the wing, and to the right is the other wing, and where the point is, that's where the beak is, and you'll have the tail feathers towards the back over here. So pretty happy with this. It's actually a very light pink violet colour. That's why this type of gem is called Rose de France. It's a type of an amethyst, a lighter colour form of the amethyst. And this stone weighs in at 16 carats, so it's quite a big gem, and it's got plenty of light refractivity bouncing off it, as you can see. And yeah, pretty happy with this design, and I will be cutting more of these, maybe different stones, but we'll just see. This was my first attempt, so this will make a very nice pendant at some point. I'm sure my wife would like it. So very happy with the Thunderbird, and I'll be moving on to other projects. Thank you for watching.